Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40K Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylard, and I'm joined by my good friend Vijay. Together, we discuss 40K and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the fireside and listen.
Oh, get that fireplace cracking. There we go. Episode 36. It has been a minute. We've been I've been focusing on life for a bit for about the past month. Got married in Greece. Vic was at my wedding, of course. Had a blast. We've had everyone around, but we're coming back to it. I have been a little bit out of practice, I think, for LGT, but I'm really excited to be playing what I'm playing. This episode, we're going to cover just so much stuff. Like we've had the balanced Dataslate drop. We've got the numbers on the faction representation for the LGT. LGT, I think, by the way, is 750-ish players, so we'll just call it 750. And it's looking really exciting because this is the first big tournament since the balanced Dataslate. And the balanced Dataslate came out, I'm going to assume, about 19 days ago of this recording. So it's been a bit of a WTC incubator in a certain sense that people have been keeping things pretty close to their chest, I think. And we've had a little bit of that spoiled by the invitational, perhaps, but I think people will keep saving their best for last at the LGT. So, welcome back, Vic. 36. It's been a minute.
It has. We both got so many messages from people asking, "What do you guys think about the balanced data slate? What do you think about the balanced data slate?" And we're going to try and tie this episode in between LGT and our thoughts on the balanced data slate, where the meta sits. We've had a bit of time to practice now, so we kind of tuned in a little bit. There were a few kind of nuances about the meta which weren't immediately obvious, but now information is starting to spread through the community as it always does. And, we've got our own ideas that we want to share with you as well.
Sure.
LGT is looking pretty hot as well. It's looking like it really represents how we feel that the meta is.
Yeah. The numbers are looking pretty balanced at the top of the LGT, which is nice as well. The faction representation is certainly a lot better than what it previously was. I think we might still have the same symptoms as before, but they're a lot less pronounced, aren't they?
Oh, definitely.
So maybe we should chat about the balanced data slate. Do you want to should we just go through? I've got it open here. We can quickly go over some of the big changes, maybe.
Go on, hit out a few points that really stood out to you, Dave.
Okay, Fire Overwatch. Getting changed to you cannot target a Titanic unit with a stratagem. I think this was quite big. I was looking at playing a monolith, and actually a decision point when I realized it couldn't Overwatch made me not want to play it. So I think that's obviously affected the Wraith mode as well. It affected the Astra Militarum tanks too, so that's a little bit of a small one. Your enemy has to be visible as well. I think it's less impactful than the Titanic version. But all in all, I think that's a healthy change for the game, especially because activating a 400-odd point unit to Overwatch with is a bit, for one CP, is a bit too crushing, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly fine change. It's kind of like they had two nerfs, and they were kind of I would have been choosing between one of two, which is what they've done in terms of how towering models gain line of sight. Now they've kind of tied it in nicely because there was one particular rule about gaining line of sight where you had to be wholly within a ruin to see through the ruin that you're in, which is quite interesting, and it's not very intuitive. But now that they have the distinction, the towering models, even if they're partially within a ruin, they count as being able to see through it. That gives a bit of a distinction between other models. That alone might have been enough to solve towering models, but they've hit them with an Overwatch change as well. I would have liked to have seen a change to Overwatch in general, rather than particularly targeting towering, but I can't complain about this. It's fine. It's in the right direction. Feel a little bit sad for night players. I know I've been a bit harsh in the past about them, but this is probably a little bit brutal and narrows down their list choices even more, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think night players as a general, I think Imperial Knights for sure, definitely a loser in this one, which is a shame because I think whilst I know you said you got a bit of flack for what you said in the last episode on it, but I think the broader point you were trying to make was that it's nice. Knights are cool if they're a diverse army when you field them. But it's more the spammy element of them, their one-dimensionality to them that makes them a bit cumbersome to play against. But we're digressing. Insane Bravery has been the most obvious change ever. You need to do it before you roll the Battle Shock test. Right. That's a great change because the fact that you could invalidate a potentially crucial Battle Shock test after the fact made the strat basically, most of the time you wouldn't even need to use it. So it's actually come up quite a few times now that you can only use the stratagem once. It's come up multiple times for me. and the fact that you need to roll it before your battle shock is quite important. So A plus on that one for me. I really like that change.
Yeah, I mean, another change which I actually thought was very good was the way that they've changed devastating wounds.
Yep.
I think they've done that it's probably one of the most impactful changes for the meta and for the game in general. Devastating wounds kind of make a bit more sense now. They're not mortal wounds, they just ignore armor and invulnerable saves. And I kind of like it. It gives you an answer for things while not kind of spilling over and making devastating wounds. Weapons kind of all purpose, kind of not killing hordes and kind of the hard thing. Now it's just really good for killing the tough target that you wanted to kill. I think they've nailed the change on that one, and I think it's going to be something we feel much more comfortable with going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Another big change was modifying a stratagem CP cost, which means that you can basically only use free stratagems on battle tactic stratagems. Now, initially, I wasn't a fan of this. I thought battle tactic was a bit narrow and niche, but actually, more that I've played it, I actually think this has been an overall net positive change for the game. I think and everyone I think kind of agrees with this, is that the number of free stratagems that you get every turn or whatnot like that, and some people had them every turn, some people had them every battle round, it just got a little bit out of hand. And I think the fact that you can use it but only for some is a good change for the game in general.
I'm going to say the overall...
There are some good changes on that. I think Vic has dropped out. The Chosen Lord, I think, can have access to some quite strong battle tactic stratagems as well. So that's a really good change, but quite an impactful one in the game. I think Marines were one of the hardest hit ones with this, where they had a lot of stratagems that weren't battle tactic. But yeah, what was your thought? I guess in Aeldari you weren't really using them that much, were you, Vic? But your previous army, Thousand Sons, I know, took a bit of a beating from this.
Yeah, that's a pretty brutal hit for Thousand Sons. It's a brutal hit for certain targeted armies. I actually find this change a little bit strange, but I kind of understand your reasoning on it. There are some armies which are going to suffer, and Thousand Sons is one of the ones which suffers the most. Not being able to make the indirect fire stratagem, which was a kind of a staple of the way I played the game. Free is a pretty big hit, to be honest. But you know what? I think it's something we're all going to get used to, and I think the accumulation, like the combination of all of these changes, is overall positive for the game. And I don't have too many complaints about the core rule changes.
Yep. So we'll give that one a B minus, I think.
Nice.
Adeptus Custodes, I think, actually got... I mean, man, they got nerfed quite a bit, but they still retain some of their core army themes. Now, I'm not an expert on that one, so I'm not going to speculate too much. But what I would say is that Adeptus Custodes are still well represented at the LGT with 5.84% in the meta, 44 people playing them out of 750. So whether or not that's just people leaning into an army that they're comfortable on, or the UKTC boards kind of encouraging combat, who knows? But I think obviously they did take a hit, but they were very strong before. And I think a lot of the strength of Custodes locked a lot of armies out of the game. So I think an overall positive change on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel really sorry for Custodes because there were a few top armies, and we always expected that the top armies would get hit. But there were a few surprises here in the sense that some of the top armies got hit harder than others, and I think Custodes, out of the top, 3-4 armies, probably got hit the hardest out of anything.
Yes.
With changes to their unit sizes, but most importantly, that change to devastating wounds. Not being able to use their main rule of a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds just means they are so squishy. They just die.
I think the free stratagem hit them a lot as well, didn't it?
Oh yeah. So they just can't exist and survive to make it to combat. They can't survive a round of being in the open.
Yeah.
Good luck to them.
Adeptus Mechanicus getting a buff that I think is well deserved. And some points changes. I still think they're going to need a few things. I actually think the Adeptus Mechanicus, apart from... the Rad Saturation army-wide ability, I think is not amazing. But there are certainly armies with worse abilities. But I think their defensive and offensive shifting style is actually quite cool. So I'd like to see them come up a little bit more. But I think that's a positive change for the direction of that army as well. Yeah. Now, on to a big one. Oh, I think there was so much speculation about what would happen with this particular stratagem. The best stratagem ever printed in the game. By far, I think. Aeldari changing Phantasm to infantry only. That's quite... I mean, obviously it's a good change, but did it go far enough, Vic?
I still think it's the best stratagem in the Aeldari Codex. But I think it has some very interesting effects on list design and kind of how Eldar play. And I think it feels a little less oppressive now. Because let's say you're playing against Eldari and they have a mixture of these monsters like the Incarns, some vehicles, and etc.
Hmm.
You can kind of set up to shoot an infantry model, but still maintain your line of sight to one of the vehicles.
Mm.
So even if the infantry unit phantasms to safety, you still have a target, so it doesn't feel quite as bad
Hmm.
and as oppressive. You at least have an option where you can kind of manage to hit a target you want to.
Yep.
But still, extremely powerful stratagem. I would have loved to have seen them go to 2 CP on this or hit the Wayleapers CP regen, just in
Yeah.
order to make CP a bit tighter for Eldari.
Yeah, the this change, I think, well, obviously it's a good change and it's a step in the right direction. One thing I think it does is it actually allows you to focus on, okay, this unit can like these 3 units can phantasm rather than their entire army. Like usually some of these armies, like Aeldari, might have 1 or 2 particular units that are prevalent, like they might have Wraithguard, for example, and it makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, at least I only have to think about them phantasming 2 units here, right? Like, and then you can kind of work around that. Okay, then set up your plan. Whereas previously it was like, well, they could phantasm this Nightspinner, or they could phantasm the Farseer or the Incarn, right? So, well, the Wraith Knight obviously is what it used to be. So, yeah, good change for the game. I think the Autarch Wayleaper was a big miss in terms of not getting nerfed. Now, he did get nerfed 15 points, I think, right?
Oh no, more than that. I think he
Was
got
it?
nerfed 35 points. So he got
Oh, right.
pretty heavy
But he's
points nerf.
115 or something like that, right?
115 now.
Yeah,
So
which is
he's still one of the best lone operatives in the game, and he has one of the best CP regens, like if not the best one, because you don't have to do anything. He just gains you CP for a very low price. It's a great package still, and I think he'll make his way into pretty much every list.
Yes, yeah, I still think he's too. Well, I thought he was 100 points starting, obviously, and then
He's very cheap.
obviously he was 80 before. Oh my lord, he's even got an assault gun, which is extremely good for doing secondaries as well. So it's got it all. Death Guard getting a huge amount of changes. I'm not a Death Guard expert, so I won't speak on that, but I think it's good to see that they've reworked the core mechanic here into something a lot more powerful, where you can worsen saves, weapon skill, ballistic skill, and what like that. So hopefully that brings Death Guard up a lot. And then
there's a few, Dave. I mean, rather than going through all of them here, I think there's a few armies particularly which have come up from the ashes, and I think Death Guard is one of them. But the other one, which I really want to talk about, is Leagues of Votann.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Because Leagues of Votann have been so bad since the index has dropped, but they've had a suite of changes, including point changes, that allows them to actually function pretty well. The Sagittars are priced to move. The Hearthguard, which are the Terminator guys, they have 30 Volkite shots and then 10d6 blast shots coming out of their backpacks, with a stratagem for sustained hits too, and now very easy access to +1 to hit and wound. And these guys, Deep Strike, Rapid Ingress, their output is perfect for the meta that we're sitting in, because the Volkite is devastating wounds, and the high volume is perfect into the potential hordes and Necrons that we might see in the meta. So I think we've got to keep an eye out for Leagues of Votann, because they can build a very strong list is quite intuitive to list build. And in LGT we've got 22 Votann players, which is a lot more than it would have been before the balanced data slate.
Yeah, I completely agree, and this is a great example of some of the armies that have really risen up. So it's not, as I think what's been typical of most balanced data slates is that it's just been a top-down nerf approach, right? So it's really good as a package. This balanced data slate is so much more comprehensive, and I suspect, and I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that's maybe connected to the new role that they advertised for match gameplay balance. And if that is, then I think it's worked out great. And another army I think has really shone up is Tau, of course, right? So Vic, a bit of a Tau man himself. Just points cost reduction for that, right, Vic?
Oh yeah, lots of points. So no rule change, but actually Tau are on the cusp of being a good army anyway. I think their win rate was very deceptive, because if you build optimally and play decently, you actually have quite a strong army before. But they took heavy points drops, like extreme, to the point where now you have an army which just has a lot of stuff. Tau has huge volume of output from crisis suits, which were probably their best unit before, and they got a big points drop as well. So I'm very interested to see how Tau do. Tau are one of the two armies which have absolutely shot up towards the top of the meta in terms of representation.
Yep.
At the LGT, we have Tau Empire sitting there as the fifth most popular army with 6% of the field. And just above them, we have Chaos Space Marines. Now, Chaos Space Marines is a funny one, right? If it's an army which is actually really good before.
Yeah, it's a well. I think this is another good example of actually they've changed the army in the right direction because they've actually identified. Okay, the oppressive parts of Chaos Space Marines were probably the Forge Fiends and the Obliterators and the amount of shooting that you could get, especially with the full rerolls and whatnot. And then what they've done is they've go, okay, we'll increase the points in that. So I don't think there's been any fundamental changes to Chaos Space Marines realistically, right? But then what they've done is they've actually just reduced the cost of all the melee stuff. So another good example of where they've actually taken a top-down approach of nerfing and then increasing the viability of some units. And actually, the Chosen Lord, like I mentioned, was the one that benefits probably the most from the stratagem, the free CP, right? So actually, that's still basically functionally the same as it used to be. Because the battle tactic one for full rerolls to hit and wound, I think, was a battle tactic. I think off the top of my head, and it's quite a good character anyway. So I think that army is fantastic. I think that it's such a more diverse army. You know, it's got melee, it's got shooting, it's got speed. So yeah, an army to watch out for is one of the top picks of the armies for me.
I mean, we saw at WTC Alexander Sacco bring multiple units of Chosen in Rhinos with the Chaos Lords, and he did very, very well. And I think even if there were no points changes on them, we would have seen Chosen and Chaos Lords become a popular part of the meta. But they got points drops as well on the Rhino, on the Chaos Lord, and on the Chosen.
Beautiful. And the untargetable Rhino, the Nurgle, is one is very powerful
and
as well.
you can have units with different marks inside a different mark transport. So, brilliant.
That's an interesting one. I think they should change that, which would be an interesting one because I do think Chaos Space Marines are maybe a bit too strong. But you know, we won't get there. I won't.
CSM are a weird one. They have incredible army rules, like Aeldari. You know, Aeldari, the free hit roll, wound roll. That's guaranteed to be good. But CSM take it to another level because the ability to just turn on sustained hits on fives, lethal hits on fives, combat and shooting is very, very powerful when you can do it on demand, and it ramps up the output of everything. Even a lowly cultist can start doing lots of damage if you're not careful.
I also think that the Dark Pact mechanic in general is a bit of a poor one from a gameplay perspective, primarily because there's actually quite a bit of admin overhead and people forget them all the time. So anyway, that's another gripe. But my faction I played at WTC got nerfed into the ground. Unironically, Deathwatch were nerfed more than any faction in the game.
Ouch, yeah.
They basically got nerfed into oblivion because the free strat is gone. You can't Overwatch anymore with Desolators. Desolators got nerfed into the ground. And then on top of that, they decided, hold my beer, that's not enough. We're going to nerf all the best stratagems for this army so they can only work on bolt weapons. So, that's a bit of a sad one. I think Deathwatch were kind of a fun army in the meta. You know, I don't think they were particularly powerful with it, which way you cut it. I think Desolation Marines in Oath Moments was a bit uninteractive, so I think that was a good one to do, but nerfing all their bolt pistols and stuff, I think was probably a bit too far, considering the strength level that they were at. But that's the way it is. So, I mean, a lot's changed, and maybe we should segue this right into the meta representation for LGT, Vic.
Yeah, there's a few more armies that we can talk about as we go down this list.
I forgot about a big one, didn't I?
Yeah, we can do it. It's coming up, man. It's right up there. It's very popular. So, I mean, the most popular army at the LGT is Adeptus Astartes. Now, in terms of individual faction within the Adeptus Astartes, overall, they're 17% of the field. But really, the most popular one is Dark Angels and Black Templars. They sit at approximately 3 to 5% of the meta. So they're kind of sitting in the middle. Dark Angels sitting slightly more towards the top in terms of representation. And it does feel like those two are coming out as the strongest Space Marine factions following the balanced data slate.
Yeah, and so Dark Angels being... Well, I think this is also a symptom of Deathwatch. So I think if Deathwatch wasn't nerfed, you would probably see them at that Black Templars level, perhaps. But yeah, Dark Angels having that pivot straight into, well, not even a pivot. It was obviously good at WTC. And then going straight into the Deathwing Knights. They do line up well against a lot of armies. They line up well against Necrons, which I'll talk about in a second here, purely because they have a big brick with a lot of output. But a lot of these Marine armies do suffer against the best army in the game right now, which is Aeldari. And... I think particularly a unit like the Night Spinner and the Incarn shut out the Marine armies very, very well, which is it's a tough spot to be in as a Marine player, I think, particularly because the Night Spinner has such a oppressive amount of play against your army. So, yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. These Black Templar lists have kind of sprung up. I know that the French team at WTC were also playing them.
Mhm.
And, it's the Crusader squad, I think, with 5 up in Van that deals so much damage. And I think the reason why these two armies are popular is, well, in large part because I think Necrons were scaring people a lot more than I think they should have been doing. So an interesting kind of meta triangle forming there where because of the perceived strength of Necrons, a lot of the meta has warped around that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on the key point about this meta. Maybe we should incorporate it into the title in some way. This is absolutely rock, paper, scissors. It's going to feel like rock, paper, scissors all the way through our discussion down here because the Deathwing Knights, they're going to be great in this meta. And then you face a Night Spinner and then it starts becoming really difficult. And Aeldari do provide a kind of a answer within the rock, paper, scissors equation to quite a few different armies. And a lot of it is because of the Night Spinner. Aeldari sit as the second most popular and technically the single most popular army in the LGT with 70 players, which is 9.3%, which is quite a bit more than the next one down, which is so Aeldari is still extremely popular, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Aeldari do. I think they come out of the balanced data slate very lucky to have not been nerfed more than they were.
Yes. Yeah.
I think a lot of their special rules, their strongest rules, have been left intact without completely nerfing them. But they have been nerfed to an extent. And in particular, the Wraith Knight being nerfed means that while the army's still incredibly strong, I still think it's fairly forgiving as well. The Fire and Fade Phantasm mechanics are very forgiving. The small unit count can also be quite forgiving at times, especially with these rules. But I think the floor of skill that you need to achieve kind of the success that Aeldari were achieving before has gone up a lot. You need to actually be a decent player and understand your strategy and the core mechanics of the game in order to achieve a good result. And we're seeing that with the win rate of Aeldari just progressively dropping down each week. The play rate is still extremely high, but the win rate is going down. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the balance between those two change, because it's 53% win rate this week, but I'm convinced Aeldari are much better than that.
Yeah, so I think Aeldari will have the highest T-Whip out of any faction there is. So tournament in winning position, basically. So I think after rounds 2 and 3, I think you'll see the representation of them skyrocket as well. I think I've complained about the Night Spinner in like the last 4 episodes. So, given the fact that some people were taking 3, I think, maybe some
who? I don't know who would do that.
I think maybe just goes to show how good they are, how good of an answer they are, which is, it's a little bit of a shame because I think that one was very obvious if you've played the game a lot. So, oh man, we got to go into this discussion at some point, don't we?
Let's do it, man.
Necrons. All right. So there's a big backstory to this whole thing. Prior to going to Greece, so I basically had this period where I wasn't going to be able to play Warhammer for basically a month, and that was going to encompass right when the balanced data slate was happening. And there was one rumor that was going around, and full preface, we have absolutely zero access to any, this is going to be in the rules change or anything like that. We don't know a single thing. So, but there were some rumors floating around, and I think most people guess that a change to Devastating Wounds is probably going to happen. It's been the most singularly complained about rule in the game. Maybe Phantasm is more, but it was pretty obvious that I think the Mortal Wounds weren't going to spill over because that's what made it super broken. So about a week before the Balanced Data Slate dropped, I was practicing 40 Necron Warriors, and because I thought that army was going to be really strong. Lo and behold, the Balanced Data Slate drops, and I'm kind of thinking, wow, this is fantastic because I've managed to get a good amount of practice in with this army, and 40 Necron Warriors still looks pretty good. Later on, I changed that to 20 Warriors, 10 Lich Guard. But the fundamental concepts of the army were still very similar. So I was in Greece at least happy that I would have an army that I've got a lot of practice on already, ready to go for LGT and ready to be prepped. Now, I think I don't know if I played against our teammates the most, but I think there were like countless games where it was me and then the entirety of Ignite team cheering on whoever I was playing against beat me on Necrons. Now, what I would say is my Necron win rate was quite good, and I think Necrons are a very good faction, but I don't think they're the right pick for this for LGT. Now, a couple of things on Necrons. I think Necrons are a lot more difficult than people give them credit for. They are, in my experience, one of the most nuanced movement-oriented armies. Whilst they don't have a lot of movement, you have to play very precisely. They're an army that can kind of collapse if you just play it brain deadly, as I found. So your movement and understanding of reanimations and nuances around coherency and scoring and list design in particular can make the difference between a good Necron list, an average Necron list that's probably just going to die to any Chaos Space Marines list that jams them, and a Necron list that actually, if you play it flawlessly, will be able to kind of be the shield against the sword there. Because I think most people in the meta have worked out if you jam against Necrons, or if you play very aggressively against them, that's one of the tactics you want to do. And so I guess it was probably... without a spoiler, I'm playing Astra Militarum for LGT. But, we were playing a game on Friday last week, so 2 days before this submission. And I was playing against our teammate Chris Radford, and I narrowly won with Necrons, and which every game is just a narrow win with Necrons, right? Mm-hmm. I was kind of thinking, and Brian Sipe from our team actually said, Dave, everyone's going to be thinking about Necrons, and every chat everywhere is talking about, I've got this unit, how does it kill 20 Necron warriors? So I think it's fair to say that the entire meta has been warped around this perceived threat of 20 Necron warriors. Now, the backdrop of this is that I also submitted Necrons for the LGT Invitational, which probably had some, impact on that. But what I kind of realize is that, do you want to be in the position in a meta where you could play an army? And I think there would be a couple of good players on Necrons, but I think I would be the standout player to have as many reps as I did with them. And I played a lot, and I was very deep in the tank on them. And so would I rather be in that position where you've got a lot of people focusing on beating your army, or maybe just take something that is a little bit off meta and, could be good in the meta, right? Is a different skew in a completely different way. So, yeah, Friday night, I was woke up Saturday morning, and I was like, guys, I'm going to play guard. And and Boris Mitchell at our team said, you're going to have a fun 24 hours list building. So, yeah, I'd already played 2 games of guard before then. I played 1 game of guard before them, and it had gone well. I had spent the plane ride home looking at the points, and I realized that actually if I constructed a list, it was 2,300 points pre-balanced Dataslate. So you basically get an entire Rogel Dawn for free, which is quite a lot. And then some of the key stuff really went down as well. So I was like, man, there might be something here. And full disclosure, I love playing guard. So I think it's probably the army that I'm maybe most known for. And I really enjoy innovating with it. So yeah, 24 hours went by. I had played a game that night, and then I played a game Sunday morning. And I just tried a bunch of stuff. And I was really happy with the list I landed on. So before I do that, I might spoil the Necron list that I had developed. How about that?
Yeah, well, maybe is it the same as your Invitational? Or no, you developed it a long way from there, didn't you?
Yeah. So the problem with the Invitational, guys, is that you have to submit your list before the LGT deadline. And I mean, I don't want to be too critical of it, but that kind of defeats... it's difficult because you're not going to submit your best list, because obviously that'll be spoiled for LGT, maybe. So what my list was Catacomb Command Barge with a 4+ Feel No Pain. A very good tool, I think. Really good for tank shocking, doing cleanse or doing homers while stuck in combat. A pain in the ass to shift. I had the Royal Warden. I had the Orican the Diviner. I had Emotech the Stormlord, which I loved. Fantastic model. +1 CP was insanely good every game. And then I had a Technomancer as well. So then I had 10 Lich Guard, 20 Warriors, 4 Cryptothorals, so I had two Cryptothorals in each. Then I had Canoptic Reanimator and Ghost Dark. So I was playing Ghost Dark, the full 4+ environmental package for the Warriors. Then I had 2 units of 3 Ophidians, which was fantastic because I was previously playing 3 units of 3 Ophidians, which are amazing. Went down 50 points. They can bounce every turn, and give you melee counterpunch when your army gets gummed up in combat. Then I was playing a unit of 10 Triac Praetorians with pistols, which I would couple that with the Sovereign Corona Hexmark, which meant that I could deep strike with a 9, full range, full rerolls to wound, and that does 8 mortals to a Yinkan on average. And then I was playing another Hexmark on top of that as well. And then I was playing some other stuff. So that's kind of like the fundamental basis of the list. and I found it to be really powerful. It was a list that, if your opponent makes mistakes, it can be very, very good against. And I was primarily playing Deploy Tellable Homers and Storm Hostile Objective. So that was kind of the list, and I really wanted to submit that. But, as we were doing a lot of the research, I was just watching some podcasts and stuff, and I watched, I think it was Manny Chima and Ed Watts talking on a podcast, and they were like, yeah, these top 7 units here, like, yeah, they all kill warriors. This kills warriors. This kills warriors. And I was like, man, why are people focusing on this army so much? Because I don't actually think they're going to do that well, considering that Tau and Chaos Space Marines, Tau have a great game into them, and Chaos Space Marines have a very good game if you're not practiced into it as well, or a very direct game. So I think between those two armies, seeing people focus on it even more than that, I think was a bit of an overfocus.
I mean, Necrons are at 50, so 6.77, and it's
Yep.
51 people. That's the third, or technically the second most popular faction at
Yep.
LGT. So obviously, a lot of people have jumped onto this idea, and considering how to beat it is very important. Now, Necrons are the paper to Aeldari's rock, because Aeldari have an incredibly tough time beating Necrons. And I think that's a big factor which probably played into this. And I think everyone's got it correct here, because Necrons are popular, Aeldari are popular. Taking Necrons makes sense, and trying to deal with Necrons makes sense. It's really interesting. I actually thought people would kind of double guess themselves a little bit, and we'd see both of these factions being a little bit less represented than they are.
Yep.
But it's worked out kind of just normal in a way.
Yeah. So I'm super curious to see how Necrons do. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if there's no Necrons in the top 8, personally.
I mean, if Necrons are paper to Aeldari's rock, then the scissors which beats Necrons is Leagues of Votann and Tau.
Leagues of Votann and Tau.
Absolutely shred.
Dark Angels and Chaos Space Marines are all very good into them, I think.
I mean, Chaos Space Marines still have to try hard in that game. Maybe the Accursed Cultist builds are a little bit better, but I know Votann and Tau, you can literally just shoot at whatever you can and start running through Necrons. So, yeah.
As a guard would say, been there, seen it, killed it. So, I mean, obviously the meta is a lot better than what it previously was. Let's talk about some other factions as well. We've got Custodes at 1 less than Tau, which is, good representation for sure, given the nerfs they copped. Tyranids at 36 players, which is 4.7%. Not overly surprising. I don't think there was anything that really stood out the Tyranid Codex, and I think it really struggles against some of the popular armies at the moment. We were trying to break it as well, but we didn't.
It does bode well, to be honest, in a way, because I think they've come through as kind of very middle of the field.
Yes, but Tyranids? What I would say is that Tyranids is already a very popular army that many people own. So if you add that modifier to it, I think they're a little bit weaker than
I might potentially say that Tyranids are not a popular collector's army.
Really?
I think many people do not own Tyranids in the same way they don't own Orcs or Genestealer Cult. The aesthetic can be a bit divisive. So
interesting.
Very interesting. So I mean, the next two factions are Grey Knights and Thousand Suns.
Yep.
And they're both equally represented. There are 33 players for each. This is awesome for Grey Knights because Grey Knights got huge points drops. Yep. They already had a really good rule set. And I've heard a lot of people saying Grey Knights are great into Aeldari. So with the changes to Aeldari, no longer having the Wraith Knight in there, I think I can see that. And I can see that, Grey Knights might have a decent chance into the field. They have a high volume of shooting, extremely good movement manipulation. They've got maybe 1 or 2 more units now in their army. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how they get on.
Definitely.
Thousand Suns? Shall I do that one? Because everyone's been asking me about what I think about Thousand Suns. I think Thousand Suns got hit fairly hard for the particular type of build that I was using in WTC. That build's become really popular. Loads of people started building it, and then the balanced data slate hits, and you get points changes across the list. Now, if Thousand Suns had dodged a points change, and just taken the rules change to the free stratagem, I think they would be in a very strong position. But the points change means that the list starts to constrict and get a little bit tighter. There's a point in Thousand Suns list building where you hit a good amount of Cabal points. That's when you get over 20. And you can start playing deep into the different tricks and rules that you have. Now, if you want to do that approach, you are going to be limiting yourself on number of units that you have on the board. And I think the list just falls off. It just goes below that critical mass of power needed to kind of consistently win against the best opponents. So I think it's still a very good army, but I don't think it sits right near the top of the meta anymore. But I really hope that, a Thousand Suns player makes it all the way to the top 8. Can you imagine?
And we've got Dark Angels, Grey Knights, Thousand Suns, 3 factions all on 33 players. Kind of nice. And then so we've got, Astra Militarum there with 29, which is good because, they got a buff, which is great. Orcs at 29, which I think maybe is a little bit underrepresented.
Always. Orcs are always underrepresented. They've been good for so long.
Yep.
And it's just there's so few good Orc players that are out there.
Leagues of Votan at 22 is definitely underrepresented. I think that their power level is quite a bit higher than that.
That's going to shoot up, I think.
Yep,
following
for sure.
LGT.
Imperial Knights at 17 is a pretty big drop-off, definitely. And then we've got Chaos Knights at 24 players as well, so 3.919, which is understandable. Yeah, but they're better than Imperial Knights, I think, right?
Interestingly, Josh Roberts is on that. That's a very, very good player. Was the captain of Team England last year. And, I think it's interesting that he's made that call. I think Chaos Knights are going to catch people out a little bit.
Definitely.
People are not teching so hard into anti-tank at the moment. Saying that...
I was going to say, if you go first and have a good run with Chaos Knights, I think they are a very good go-first army for sure as well.
Yeah, just sitting on the objectives, high OC. They really catch all the firing lines once they get into position in the middle of the board.
Yep. Chaos Demons took a hit as well, which was quite surprising to be in the points. Not really sure why they went up in points.
Took a hit? Did they?
Yeah, they went up in points. Lord of Change went up, Bellicor went up, Bloodthirster went up.
And Shalaxi, but they took some points drops in different areas. They suddenly become very, very good allies.
Yes.
Because, some units have got some nice points drops, and the Blue Scribes escaped a points increase.
Ooh, slippery buggers.
So,
So the meta looking quite good. Aeldari at the top, I would say. If you were going to make a prediction of any 2 armies, Vic, that would win LGT, what would you pick?
So this is the point where you start to get a little bit of an internal meta. Because Team Ignite has been split half and half between Aeldari and CSM, which is kind of funny. And I was kind of sitting in between trying to decide, do I go for CSM? Do I go for Aeldari?
Yep.
Liam VSL and Chris Radford have both gone for CSM. And then Brian Seep and me, and then Yokel joined us for building an Aeldari list. And I ended up going for Aeldari. And I'm going to say that those 2 factions have the widest range of... I think CSM more than Aeldari, to be honest. I think CSM literally have a game into everything in the meta. Aeldari have a few bad matchups, but I think Aeldari can just kind of... You have the tools to play yourself out of a bad matchup if you play really, really well. So I still think Aeldari are going to come out alongside CSM as my front runners for who I think is going to make it to the end of LGT.
Yep. And actually the exact same 2 for me as well. Aeldari and Chaos Space Marines, I think, have the best chance at winning the event, not only because of the power of their factions, but the way they line up against everything else. And in addition to that, the players that took them as well. I think the right players are on those right 2 factions. Tau have got a chance, but I think Tau is going to hit very tough doors against the good CSM and Aeldari players later on in the event. Yeah,
the Aeldari matchup is a question mark, because I think that's really tough when that starts to go wrong for the Tau players. And I mean, I was looking at some of the event results for Aeldari in America, and Aeldari did quite well at the biggest tournament of last weekend, RatCon, I think, something like that. And I was looking through all the lists, and I was like, why is it so different from what we run? They have just very few Night Spinners, loads of Fire Prisms and other stuff. And here in the UK, half of us have triple Night Spinner. The other half have 2 Night Spinners and then multiple units of Dark Reapers. It's just the level of indirect fire is huge, and what Tau do not want to see is Night Spinners on the other side of the board, taking their Crisis Suit units down from 18-inch movement down to 10 is just
brutal. Absolutely brutal. And does that apply on the Fire and Fade as well?
I don't know if it's I think they Fire and Fade 7 or 6 inches, so even if at -2 it doesn't.
But a lot of times that minus, because their vehicles means that they can't get around ruins as tightly as they'd want to, and you get an opening firing angle on them as well.
They need that 18-inch Cold Star movement. Without that, they really struggle to maneuver. Their drop turn can be great, but the problem is Aeldari have the kind of Phantasm move to start limiting things.
Yep.
It starts to get real dicey in the mid game.
It means you can't rapid ingress the suits, which is the strongest play for Tau,
Yeah.
I think.
If you rapid ingress them, they're going to get pinned down.
Yep. Awesome. So I think that's a good segue into maybe what you're taking to the event, Vic.
Yeah, mine's boring compared to yours, Dave. So I want to make sure you have lots of time for it. But I mean, people are a little bit interested in the fact that I am back to Aeldari. I've jumped off Thousand Suns. Aeldari are my favorite faction, and I was kind of waiting for.
Is that true?
Um,
Out of every faction, I think T-Suns, Sisters, Thousand Suns come to mind, and Aeldari. Aeldari is your favorite?
yeah, 100 is my first army, my favorite army. I think I put Grey Knights is probably my second favorite army, and then
Nice.
Sisters, and then Thousand Suns. So Aeldari are my favorite, and I like moments where they're a little bit like they're really strong, but not the best army in the game. Unfortunately, they're not quite there. I think they still are the best army in the game.
Yeah.
But I feel really happy to have my Aeldari models out. Every time I play an army again, I add a few more details to my models, so they're getting progressively a little bit better.
Nice.
And I'm bringing quite a straightforward list on paper. It has all of kind of the best things you want to see. I have triple Night Spinner, 2 units of Warp Spiders, 1 unit of 6 Shadow Spectres. That was a third unit of Warp Spiders, but a little bit of tech. We've added a unit of 6 Shadow Spectres to the list.
Nice.
I've got a Farseer on foot, a Spirit Seer with Fate's Messenger, who tacks onto a 10 Wraith Guard brick with Wraith Cannons.
Mhm.
And I've got the Yinkarn, the Autarch Wayleaper with the Phoenix Gem, and Fugan, who's kind of like a second Phoenix Gem. And that's a nice, simple Aeldari list. So it doesn't have very many units now, but every unit is kind of impactful and synergizes very well with each other. It plays the mission really well. It holds primary a little bit with Wraith Guard. It has really good anti-tank because the Wraith Guard are still excellent at that. It's very good in a passive game.
And you've gone for the 18-inch range guns on the.
I've gone for the Wraith Cannon,
okay.
so I've gone for the direct anti-tank.
Yep.
There was an argument to be made for the 12-inch kind of D
Certainly.
sides, but I mean it's a toss-up, and then so me, Yokel, and Brian all have pretty much identical lists submitted, and we've all gone for the Wraith Cannons.
Yeah, so I think if you're playing 20 Wraith Guard, playing one with the 12, one with the 18 is a nice way to play the game there.
Yeah.
So talk to me, Vic, about the difference between 3 Night Spinners and 2 Night Spinners, because I think that's a breaking point for a lot of people where they want to decide taking the list. But if I'm not correct, the 3rd Night Spinner amplifies your ability to launch the Yinkarn quite considerably, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's 2 benefits because for my particular playstyle, I'm not a naturally aggressive player. If I look at a board state, Brian will go, right, how can I push my army into their face? And can I expose multiple, and same with Liam, can I expose multiple units in a way where I'm progressed up the board, but the opponent can't deal with everything, and then I just win the game, and it's a big win. My way tends to be, can I do a little bit of damage or clear a section of the board without being interacted with back? So I'm playing a lot slower across the game. The opponents may be ahead of points for a period of time, and then at the end of the game, I start to catch up a little bit once they run out of resources. And the triple Night Spinner really fits my playstyle in this case because Aeldari naturally have a fire and fade mechanic. They have very fast kind of infantry models. The Warp Spiders being able to move 24 inches means you can kind of go, okay, here's this point on the board. 2 units of Warp Spiders and 3 Night Spinners are all targeting one area of the board. That area is cleared. The unit of Warp Spiders, I just use fire and fades. The other unit, phantasms to safety, and then they're just not doing anything. If you want, you can shoot the Yinkarn with -1 to wound, who's on the side. And if you go really aggressive and kind of kill something in another part of the board, the Yinkarn will teleport there and set up position. So there's just really passive ways of playing the early game, which I love having triple Night Spinner for. If you want to drop one of the Night Spinners or 2 of the Night Spinners, you start adding much more tech pieces to the list. You can add a second Wraith Guard brick, which is what Nassim's gone for. You could go for a way that Clem's gone for from Dice Down, where he's added in kind of a couple of units of Dark Reapers, a couple of units of Crimson Hunters. Can you believe that's the plane? That's the anti-fly plane. And just kind of spread the list out a little bit more. The Night Spinners are still expensive at 180, and that can add up to 2 units very easily if it's removed from the list. So I agree with you that a big thing is that you can activate the Yinkarn, but I also love that it just opens up a really passive playstyle.
Yeah. Yeah, and that army's great because you can play passive or you can play aggressive, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Really good list. What were some of the other interesting options that you thought were in Aeldari that maybe once the LGT list dropped, that you were like, oh, that's an interesting choice? Or was there anything you overlooked, or did you guys pretty much think cover all bases when you were doing your list design?
We were jumping around a lot because we were very
Yeah.
focused on the 20 Necron warriors
Yep.
and the solutions that Eldari have to that problem.
So
And
there's a funny night, by the way, guys, where I think I played Yokul, and it was it was Vic, Brian, and Yokul against me, playing Necrons versus Eldari. And after the game, we were chatting about, what can you do and all that stuff. And then I was like, no, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. And Brian said, stop being so flippant, David, and actually offer some constructive feedback. And then I told them how to win after
yeah,
that.
so we have a secret tactic from Dave that actually does work in the Necron game.
Yeah.
It requires like really good player skill to play it through to the end of the game. You still and you especially against a good Necron opponent, but there's definitely a path where even against extremely hoardy armies, Eldari can still play out and negotiate a small win.
Yep.
But it requires a lot of skill, and I think that's where kind of Eldari might fall apart a little bit in some unlucky matchups.
Mhm.
Like if you hit what Manny Chima's running with a bunch of accursed cultists, and he's a nightmare with his army selection. Stuff like that. You hit a horde, and you're like, okay, oh my god, what do I do? Let me just run into them and see what happens. You're probably going to lose that game, and I think a lot of people will, even if they're on Eldari. So it'll be interesting to see how kind of the tactics that you've helped us develop, Dave, help in the tough matchups for Eldari.
Yeah, and what's great, harkening back to Necron, because I actually really do like Necrons. Is that every game we played, I actually found lots of small little things I could do a lot better. And there were some quite big revelations that I realized, actually, oh, if I did this, that means that even if you did that, I would still get to this position here, which goes through. There are lots of layers to an army like Necrons, I think, which is going to be interesting to see how people do. Okay.
Let's do it, Dave. What are you bringing to LGT?
All right. So I can't really resist an opportunity to play guard, if I'm being honest. I think about my guard tournaments. I won Southampton, innovating the first guard list to win a super major, and then I came second place at Weimerfest playing my ridiculous list, and then at Birmingham we won that as well with my ridiculous list. And so I've always had a passion, and the reality is that I have a Rogal Dawn that I spent like 16 hours painting. So when I saw the 25-point decrease on that, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'll play that. But yeah, so a large part of it was army availability as well, because I wanted to play something that I obviously had as well. So I've got Thousand Suns, Tyranids, Admech, Marines, Guard, and Necrons. They're getting up there. And I think of those factions, Guard were definitely the one that I realized after looking on the plane ride home and building lists that actually no one's probably going to be really thinking about Guard. And actually the list build is entirely different from the previous style of guard list that you would build, which is two very big positives, right? Because people won't be experienced playing against it, and they won't be thinking about it because it didn't previously exist. Not like Necron Warriors, where they did previously exist, and people sort of saw the devastating wounds change and knew that they would already be strong. That was quite an easy jump to make. So yeah, I've gone with guard, and I'll just run through the list really quick, because this list, I think, it's pretty optimal, but there's a couple of points I might think about changing if I was going to do it again. So, Gaunt's Ghosts, I don't know why they went down 15 points, but at 100 points, you would still play them 115. So, God knows why they went down. But, okay, you're going to play Gaunt's Ghosts. They're really good. They can bounce every turn. They do your secondaries. They have stealth, so they're -1 to hit. Lone Operative, so they can't be targeted outside 12. They can order themselves. They have fights first. What? Even if you look at it on paper, Gaunt's Ghosts have a 6 model unit with only 1 character. So they have 10 wounds on the 5 guys with 2 wounds each, and then 3 wounds on the main guy. So you're at 13 wounds there for 100 points. Okay, I'm going to admit, I think that unit's a bit too powerful, but it sits inside a weaker codex in general. I am playing Lord Solar Leontis. He gives you 1 CP, and surprisingly enough, I've actually found the redeploy quite good. Despite it being a pre-roll-off redeploy, like they all are, well, mostly all are nowadays, I've actually still found it quite good because you have so many drops in your army that you can actually, and most armies are playing like kind of big centerpieces, so you can see where they put their centerpieces and then rearrange where your gun lines are going to be, and the corridors that you're going to need to see and the angles that you're going to need to see. So despite the nerf, obviously it's better if you know who goes first, but despite that, I still think it's quite good, which in general I think is a positive thing for that mechanic, because it is very strong when it's after the roll-off, but I still think it's good pre-roll-off. Now, the big boys that went down a lot. 3 tank commanders, baby. These guys got so much better. I mean, they already had a great data sheet, but they went down, I think, 35 points from 240 to 205. Now, that all of a sudden, I think, is a really competitive data sheet in a meta that is not going to be thinking about them. So some of their main benefits are they got a 2-up base save, which means they're taking 1-ups in cover, because pop smoke is like one of your best stratagems, unironically. And then they're at tier 11, 13 wounds. Now, that's a pretty hard chassis for many armies to shift off the bat. If you think about Forge Fiends, for example, at strength, I believe they're strength 10, they're wounding tank commanders on 5s. Okay, great. And you've got access to -1 damage, which is really good too. And then, you can't blast into them as well. So you're just rolling the number of shots you get here. But on top of that, they've always gotten, the Guard Codex has changed. Like many things, they get all the free war gear. So, at 205 points, you get the 2 Militarum plasma cannons, which is great because in the previous codex, you paid 20 points for that upgrade. So that's just baked into the datasheet now. And Militarum plasma cannons are pretty good into a meta that is kind of hoardy. Like, they're good into Tau because it's 8 minus 2, and you get a free blast there into the Crisis. They're good into Necron Warriors. They're good into Chaos Space Marines. Still fine into Aeldari. They got 36 inch range. So, all in all, I really like those. I've gone with the Las Cannon as well, and I've gone with the Executioner Plasma Cannon as the turret weapon of choice, or the non-turret weapon of choice, because that doesn't exist anymore, because it's AP3, Strength 8, -3, flat 3, and there's nothing better at picking up Wraithguard and Chosen than AP3, -3, flat 3 blast as well. So, all round, I think, I've got the Hunter Killer Missile as well, which everything gets now, which is a nice bonus. But if you look at this profile, you've got a D6 plus 3, 8 minus 3, 3 cannon, blast. You've got a heavy stubber, which is 6 shots at 18 inch range, 2 blast weapons at 8 minus 2, 2. Then you've got a las cannon and a hunter killer missile. So you've got, on one chassis, you've got something that's good at killing tanks, and something that's good at killing blast or hordes, and you've got something that's good into stuff like Chaos Space Marines at the right profile. So yeah, it's a really well-rounded way to run that. I know some people run the Demolisher Cannon, which I think is an interesting choice. It's a 24-inch range, which is, on paper, it's a little bit better if you're within 24, but a lot of these armies can close 24 inches, which is a problem. So you really, like all good guard players, you want to be playing the longest angle at the max range possible. So I've gone with the Executioner Plasma Cannon for that case. So, nice. Tank Commander. As you can see, I'm quite passionate about guard.
You are.
So that's 3 Tank Commanders. You got my access to -1 damage, which completely rinses Tau. That matchup is very good for you. Then I've got 2 units of 10 Mighty Catachan Jungle Fighters. Now, these guys went down 5 points. 55 points for 10 guys. 2 Flamers, and they have a Voxcaster, which is good. And they have Scout Move 6. So Catachan Jungle Fighters and the Chimera went down. I think the Chimera went down 15 points. Catachan went down 5 points. So 10 Jungle Fighters and a Chimera runs you $125, which is pretty cheap because the Chimera has Firing Deck 2 as well. So you can put 4 Flamers in there, or you can just park your Chimera, pre-game move at 6, then you've got units that move 9 out of that and can advance in an OC2 and can move block people's armies. So that's really good. Now, I've made a little decision here. It's a bit of an optimization. I haven't got any squad that goes with my Leontis, but in a matchup where my opponent has lots of indirect and they might kill Leontis, I can put the ghosts, as to best of my knowledge, I'm going to double check this after the podcast, I could put the ghosts in the Chimera and I can attach Leontis to the Jungle Fighters if I think he gets in danger, but he's not a very good target to shoot with all your indirect anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. Next up, we've got a squad that I've been quite impressed by, the Bulgren squad now. They went down in points, so there were 160 points here, and I've gone with 3 Stab Shields, 3 Brute Shields. Now, what this means is that these guys got a lot better. They are Toughness 6, and you strap them with a 4-up Invan, and you can order them to be a 3-up base save with Leontis as well. They move 6, but with the new move, you can make them move 9, just flat 9 base, which is a pretty good distance gap cover. The best part is they're -1 damage natively, and they also have a 6-up Feel No Pain. So if you look at a Forge Fiend, for example, or Obliterators, they have a nightmare at killing Bulgrins because you got a 4-up Invan on the 3-wound guy, and he tanks 2 shots when he fails to, so he likely tanks 3 shots from a Forge Fiend as well. So a Forge Fiend kills like 1.5 Bulgaren or 2 maybe. So they line up really well, and they a lot of these melee components that have damage 2 just go straight down to damage 1. So they're really good at slowing the game down, allowing your shooting pieces to operate. Alrighty, onto the vehicles.
This is a list and a half, man.
This is really good. So Night Spinners are really good because they slow stuff down. So take 2 Basilisks. Basilisks are still really good. They didn't get hit by the points increase, which is good because you primarily want to play them for the slowing. Now, their slowing's arguably it's a little bit better than the Night Spinner in some regards because it can slow the advance charge and the movement by 2, which is a total of 6. So if you've got a unit that wasn't going to advance and charge, it's slowing them by 4 rather than 2 on the Night Spinner. But you know what? It holds your backfield objectives. It can slow down. So against like Chaos Space Marines, for example, hit the Chosen, hit the Warp Talons, -2, means that they can't close the gaps that otherwise a lot of these people have designed their list around to do, which is fantastic because you've also got the opportunities to pop these Rhinos, and then you can shoot what's inside of them as well. So 2 Basilisks. I went with 1 originally, but then I bumped it up to 2 after thinking about how popular maybe Tau and Chaos Space Marines were going to be. And great against Necrons too. Slow down the Lich Guard.
It also gives you just a little bit of attrition. They're actually like scarily efficient at shooting.
Yep.
It's because all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, they're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. And I'm like, hold on, what?
Yeah. So 2 Basilisk, great. Next up, the new boy on the block, Leman Russ Eradicator. Now, I had 160 points, and I was trying to decide what variant of the Leman Russ I was going to take. What I ended up... So originally I was playing the Vanquisher, because I was like, Vanquishers are kind of good, because you get 155 points, you get the 2 Plasma Cannons, and then, you basically strap a whole bunch of war gear to it for free, on a and it's the same chassis. That's kind of good. But the Eradicator is kind of bad against Aeldari, because if you do shoot... so the Vanquisher is kind of bad against Aeldari, because you shoot your Vanquisher, and then just save it with a dice, which is terrible. So I went with the Eradicator because I wanted something that I could play a bit more aggressively and maybe from outflank. And if it got tagged in combat, I wasn't going to be too worried about it because the Eradicator Nova Cannon doesn't suffer the penalties for shooting in combat. And what that means is that it also ignores cover. So it's 7 - 1 2. It's 6 plus D3. So it's a bit more consistent and it ignores cover. So it's effectively AP2. So still a really good profile. You can play it a bit more aggressively. And then it's got the 2 plasma cannons, hunter killer missile, las cannon there as well. So I like that variant. 160 points. You could play another unit of Bulgaren, which I think is interesting. But when I put 2 units of 6 Bulgaren on the battlefield, I found that they were a bit difficult. They kind of took up the same spaces as each other where they wanted to stage. So I didn't think playing 6 was going to work out too well for me. So we got another Eradicator, and that just puts more pressure on your opponent. Rogel Dawn, here we go. The Rogel Dawn's good. What can I say? 260 points. It's like T12, 18 wounds, 2 up save. It's got 6 melter guns. I'm playing the 2 multi-melters, 2 melter guns, the Oppressor Gun and Coaxial Auto Turret. Got the Pulverizer Cannon, the Heavy Stubber as well. It's OC5, and you know what? Oftentimes your opponent has to commit so much to kill it that if you put it in a position where it pressures your opponent to then have to kill it, you get to counter-strike with your entire army, which is oftentimes one of the stronger parts about Guard, is that your chassis are very tough to kill, and then you get to hit back at a much more, and you get to trade up on the crackback, which is the way I like to use them. And you can move 13, all your tanks can kind of move 13 inches with the move command, and then get angles as well. So, I mean, the chance of killing him on turn 1, not fantastic. So, as long as you've got the pieces that look into a spot that he was at, then you can kill people back. Nice. 1 Scout Sentinel. Now, I think Scout Sentinels are a bit of a touchy topic. I do understand that if you have units of 3, you can get them back with the reinforcements. The thing about it is, though, a good player will often whittle your Scout Sentinels down to just having 1, and you're never going to be able to pop that. In addition to that, they give up bring it down a lot easier. And in addition to that, I'm playing tactical a lot of the games, and I'm actually using like Pop Smoke, -1 damage, Fields of Fire. I'm using New Orders, Grenade Strat. I'm using all of these things. Sometimes just CP reroll if it's maybe it's an Obliterator into a Leman Russ, and it might be a clutch thing. Reroll a save. All of those things are much more important, in my opinion, than maybe situationally getting a reinforcement off. So I've just gone with the 1. I've gone with the las cannon variant with the hunter killer missile because the plasma's all right, but with no rerolls, it's kind of crappy. So I'd rather just lob two big anti-tank guns on it and then just outflank it, spot something for my basilisks, and then try and light something up once. Maybe kill an Autark Way Leaper.
Oh yeah, I like that. I think that's the right loadout.
And then, 2 Chimeras. I've gone with the Heavy Flamer and the Flamer. And with the Catachan Jungle Fighters, it does give you 4 Flamers, which is not bad. And then the pre-game move. They have a Hunter Killer Missile as well. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 Hunter Killer Missiles in my army, which is basically 9 once activation las cannons as well. So, yeah, it's really fun, man. The downside to the army is that you give up Bring It Down. But I think a smart player often plays into, like I did at the previous list, they often play into your opponent taking Bring It Down, which actually means you can play a bit more defensive. And Guard, when you can play them defensively, is really good because all of a sudden you can control all the movement in the board. I found the playstyle to be quite similar to the one I previously played in 9th edition. And it's really fun. It's something that I just naturally gravitate to playing very well. I really enjoy looking at lines, distances, outputs, and whatnot like that. So back on Guard, baby.
It's very naturally like the way you want to play. Like that's what I've seen. Like you just kind of, because you jumped into this list a little bit late in the kind of list decision process because you were a bit busy. But you just played your first game and you were so hot with everything you were doing, and that's the joy of playing an army which just suits you. So I have really high hopes for you, Dave. And I think a lot of people are going to be rooting for you.
Yes,
because of your army choice, much more so than if you'd gone Necrons.
You're probably right. What I would say is I will make a public apology. I tried my hardest to get Sly Marbo in the list.
Oh no!
But at 65 points, he's just not. He just doesn't cut it. So
bring him along.
I'll bring him along as my token.
He can guard your CP dice.
Yeah. But no, I've been really enjoying it. It's been great. I'm much more comfortable playing it than I am playing Necrons. It's got so much more play to it, and I think it's got a lot of play even into Aeldari. I think it's got play, and certainly into Chaos Space Marines and stuff like that. So
I'd say Aeldari is probably the toughest game for it, as part of this rock paper scissors kind of thing. But otherwise, I think it's a really good anti-meta pick. People are not prepared to deal with this many vehicles outside of the Wraith Cannon Wraith Guard.
Yep.
And the Wraith Cannon Wraith Guard, I've seen them drop out of a lot of Aeldari lists in the LGT. Nas is running 20 because he's mad. But otherwise, it's just the Ignite guys with 10, and then all the Dice Down guys have dropped Wraith Guard.
I think actually those lists, I don't know, but those lists that have no Wraith Guard might be a bit scarier for me. Particularly because I have the Basilisk. Yeah, because I have the Basilisk to lock down the Phantasm, and then all of my damage outputs look very good into Wraith Guard.
Phantasm drops off before. The minus movement drops off before Phantasm. But you will stop their movement. But because it's before you shoot. Yeah.
My game plan.
It's all gone wrong.
There we go. Good to know though. But or maybe I'll just be plinking. That's good to know because maybe I need to go for some other assets. I'll have a chat with Vic after.
No,
what I should be shooting with my Basilisks.
Yeah, just everything else.
Okay, great. Nice. Guard, really fun. I get to bring all my well-painted models as well, which I'm really enjoying and stuff like that. So, yeah, good times. Happy about
it. Man. I'm super excited. I've got the Yin Khan to paint. I've had the Yin Khan for years, but I've never found a moment which was right to actually use her.
Nice.
So you heard him. I don't know. Because she's kind of half-half. And I'm very, very excited. So, yeah.
Beautiful model. Nice. Should we, do you want to touch on kind of what some other players have been taking, for example?
Yeah, well, I think Manichima's list is extremely interesting, as it always is. He has the ability to play really switch to these very skewy kind of exaggerated armies because he can get access to the models and get them painted up and things. But behind that particular ability is the ability to actually list build this nonsense. And Mani's gone for triple Accursed Cultists with Abaddon giving them a 4-up invuln, and then he's got 3 big units of normal cultists who are also getting the 4-up invuln. And then he's got 2 Forge Fiends and Abby walking in the middle of the army. I think this is a super interesting kind of idea and list design. And I'll be really interested to see how it does. If he hits the correct path, where he, say, doesn't walk into like a bad Tau game or into Leagues of Votan,
Mm-hmm.
I could see him really doing well. And I think he's going to punish a lot of Eldari players that go against him.
Mm-hmm.
Eldari are the most represented faction. Maybe he's done the right thing.
I would be worried. Like, I guess when we saw this drop, being perfectly honest, I would be worried that this list catches a lot of the flack from Necrons because they are quite similar, and a lot of profiles that are very good into Necrons are also very good into this list.
Yeah.
So I think whilst it is it's a great list, and it's not. I mean, off meta is probably not the right description, but yeah, it's a great list. No one's probably played against it before, so there's those two big advantages. But the downside is that it does lean into a lot of what people are going to be ticking for.
Yeah.
For example,
brilliant.
Well, yeah, of course. But I think the Chaos Space Marine lists are also, potentially good against that too, right? Just multiple Forge Fiends, a unit of 10 Chosen, Warp Talons. I mean, they hit really hard in combat too.
It's also an army that requires very precise positioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always hesitant to take armies like this to a tournament which isn't WTC. I think in WTC you can with the long rounds, but this is an extremely hard army to play with in time. So good luck to him. He's going to have to play rapid fast to get through his games.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that list does though. I want to chat about Innes Wilson. He's gone with Chaos Space Marines, which I don't think I've seen him play before. Which is cool. I'm sure he's played it, obviously, but
cool.
I don't think he's known for it per se. 3 Chaos Lords, Warpsmith with a Mark of Zinch, which I think is something that no one else.
It's the CP regen. Remember, I was using that in the testing, and we kind of dropped it because it wasn't point sufficient, but I kind of like it. Extra CP.
There you go, Innes. Vic already tested that one, mate. He's got the unit of 10 Chosen, which I think is just look, okay. 10 Chosen do a lot of damage in one activation. So this is always fascinating me because you see these people that I was saying to our teammates beforehand, I was saying, break down those units of 10 Chosen maybe, because I don't think Necrons are going to be that popular once you get deeper in the tournament. So a little bit of optimization, I think. But yeah, so I think it's just an interesting choice when you see people take 10
So
versus 5.
I'm going to say with the 10 Chosen, I think it is the correct choice because the Armor of Contempt is still a battle tactic.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
there's a lot of times where having 10 Chosen means half of them die and you're left with 5 Chosen and a Chaos Lord. And that kind of little bit of sustain, that ability to survive a round of shooting, is actually super useful because you can deploy in positions you otherwise couldn't.
Yep. You could make them Nurgle, though, and then...
You should make them Nurgle. The output starts to get a bit questionable.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Then he's got 6 Obliterators, so unit of 4, unit of 2, 5 Warp Talons, 1 Forge Fiend. So it's interesting. I think the Forge Fiend roughly swaps for the Obliterators, basically, right? Some people play 2x2, 2 Forge Fiends. Innes is playing 1 Forge Fiend and then 4 and 2. So, yeah, interesting. I think, this rough archetype of list is one of the most popular in the tournament. I think this triple Chaos Lord CSM build with Rhinos with 2 Nurgling Rhinos, of course, is kind of the build. And it's after that, it's more about, are you doing 6 Obliterators, or are you doing 4, or are you doing 3 Forge Fiends, or are you doing 2, kind of where you go. I do have to say, though, the innovation of taking Celeste for the Ignite build for Chaos Space.
Did Innes have that? No?
No,
that's it. That was the secret tech. Yes, he got it in.
I think that's a good one.
I think Celeste is brilliant for her points. So
yeah, should we look at? I was curious about what Kyle Grundy is playing, and I was curious what you would think of the kind of Tau meta at the moment.
Big Kyle. I mean, Alex Harrison's on Tau as well. So is Alex Petford. We've got a few very good Tau players.
Kind of what was your? Did you have any time to think about Tau, Vic, and kind of what you think you would have played in relation to how many broadsides versus how many crisis sort of thing?
I would personally run 0 on the broadsides, but I think there's a huge amount of innovation that is possible within Tau. I think Alex Harrison's got the most kind of like cookie cutter strong build. Just a couple of cold stars, big units of crisis, 1 small unit of crisis, and then Tetras and Piranhas.
That's right. He's got the 2-man. He's got the 2/6-man, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think building like that is the most obvious way of doing it. It's very strong, very optimized. But I think there's a level of list building you can do with Tau, which is going to become apparent over the next month or two. I have a feeling there are still some very good units in there. I really like Skyrays. I love Devilfish with breaches. And it's just about finding the right combination of things to make the list tick. Do you need to run 663 on the crisis? Do you run 633? Can you do MSU commanders and be okay giving up Assassinate and bring it down? there's a lot of options which need to be explored in Tau. But I think,
Alex also is running Longstrike as well.
oh yeah, he's got a long strike. That's pretty cool. So interesting. How about Kyle? Is there anything different in there?
I think Kyle's list was quite standard. You know, he had
Maybe ghost
2
kills?
units of. He did have a ghost kill, yes. So I was going to ask you about that actually. The ghost kill. I've seen people wanting to run 2 of them, wanting to run 1. Kind of, what's the story with that? It does seem like quite a difficult unit to kill, if I'm being honest.
It's incredibly difficult, and I think I've seen Richard Siegler running multiple ghost
Mm-hmm.
kills,
Yep.
2, 3 ghost kills, and just holding the midboard.
Yep.
And I think that can be really strong. What I would say is that on UKTC, your second objective can be often held by something a bit cheaper than a ghost kill.
Yeah.
You just tuck something in tuck a piranha or a tetra behind the wall on that kind of your natural progression, and that's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
The ghost kill is quite expensive still for the output it gives, and you could probably replace it with something more efficient in the list.
Yeah. Kyle has gone for the 2x2 broadsides, which
Oh, he's
is
got 2x2.
interesting. You know,
Okay.
I don't hate. You know, I mean, obviously I'm playing guard now, so the broadsides are a bit of it.
I think Alex has got 2 broadsides as well. So okay, I
Yeah,
might
I
be
think he's
wrong
got
on
2
that one.
and Kyle has 4, I think.
Yeah, I just felt that the broadsides sometimes struggle to maneuver, even if they played out of strat reserves. They people are really wary about the line of sights and angles they can get.
Yeah.
But I do understand. I think there's a way in Tau of getting lethal hits, which I think is very important for dealing with tanks. The alternative, if you don't build into that, is to build into broadsides.
Yep. Nice. And then maybe we should. I was going to say Josh Roberts also went to Chaos Space Marines. I think it's. Is it
He went to
13 or
Chaos
14?
Knights.
Sorry, to Chaos Knights. Is it
Yeah.
13 or 14 dogs with the blue scribes and the changeling? It's either 13 or 14.
I don't know. It's just it's one of those, isn't it?
TJ Lanigan is coming with Gene Stealer Cult, so
Oh, really?
he's coming
That's
across the
interesting.
pond to play. And yeah, was there anyone else? Was there any?
Anthony Vanella.
Oh yes, of course.
Anthony.
Yes, let me.
Legend.
How about this? Because I've never actually read a World Eater list before, so
Oh, I don't
we'll
know
go
what
for it.
anything is either. I just think it's incredibly cool that he
That's
has
cool.
made a flip to World Eaters,
like
traveling halfway across the world to play at the LGT.
Let's go.
What an absolute
Because
hero.
he played Chaos Space Marines at WTC, so
Mhm.
I think that would have been a natural jump for him as well. But World Eaters did go down in points, but starting off at the top of the list, and I did listen to this YouTube video actually. It's that at the top of his list here is the Barbie and Ken song. It's kind of funny. Angron at 415 big ones. Come
Yes.
on, baby. Love it. Khan the Betrayer, Lord Avocado, World Eater, Lord on Juggernaut, Master of Executions, who I'm guessing still slaps, Jackals, Corn Berserkers, 2 Rhinos, a unit of 8 bound, a unit of 8 bound, and a big unit of 8 bound. So, yeah, I mean, it's World Eaters, I guess, right?
It's cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool. So, I mean, we all want to see Anthony do well. I hope he gets the easiest path, avoiding all night spinners in his way, and just progresses to the finals and wins the whole thing.
Yeah. Or if you do hit a night spin, Anthony, I hope you just go first.
Yeah, I hope they leave it in strat reserves and forget to bring it.
I would like to chat on this list as well. Now, this player is in retirement right now. I'm not sure how much he plays, but this player and I used to share lists. So this is Melik. He is playing Admech. And looking at the top of his list design, I may be, maybe just chucking some stuff together. But he's playing Admech. He's got 2 Manipulus, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of differencing between Vanguard and Rangers, units of 10, which I think are really good. They went down in points actually, which is cool. A Dune Rider. He's got a Archaeocopter Transvector, which, if you don't know, is the transport plane.
That's so cool.
And then he's got a unit of Corpuscari Electro Priests, which, if I'm not mistaken, also went down in points and have the Jazz Hands for the Tesla. And I think there's a strat where you can get like more AP or something, or you can put your army into more AP. I think you can put this in the Transvector, and then you can Rapid Ingress the Transvector in your opponent's turn if you go second, and then you can like move and get out because it's a transport. I don't know. That seems pretty sweet. 6 breaches with the arc rifle and hydraulic claw. From most Admech lists I saw previously, breaches were kind of the anchor, and then 3 Scorpius disintegrators because I guess it's still Malik at the end of the day, isn't it? Go for some indirect. But he's also got Lord Inquisitor, Kyria Draxus, and a Vindicator Assassin. So that's a really sweet list.
And a Vindicare assassin,
Yep.
guys. He is just after my own heart.
No.
I think there's probably some kind of level of kind of careful decision making that's
Yep.
gone into this list. But I also think it's incredibly cool to innovate to this level. So
Yeah.
come on, Malik.
No Rust Stalkers.
I want
anyway.
LGT final to be Anthony Vanilla versus Malik Antonio. That is what the people want.
Yeah, so those are I guess those are people I wanted to touch on, really. I mean, other than that, most of the meta is kind of playing lists that we described. Oh, I would like to chat about someone, actually, because I think this player is quite good. It's not, his list isn't coming up. Give me 1 second, guys, because I think this is a Grey Knight list, and this player does think about the game a lot, doesn't get to play necessarily, but is very smart at the game. His name is Vincent Chan.
Vince, yes.
The best man at my wedding, actually, coincidentally.
Yes.
Vincent Chan on Grey Knights. Now, like you mentioned, I think Grey Knights got a lot better. And let's see what Vince is playing.
What is he running? I want to see.
He has got triple Librarian. Let's go, baby.
Yeah, so the Librarians can basically throw off Doom Bolts, essentially.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
D3
cool.
plus 3 mortals.
That's probably a better access to killing tanks, I take it, right?
Yeah, so all 3 of them can focus down a tank.
Nice. Castellan Crow. Nice. Drago, which I think gives you the +2 to charge, I think.
Yeah, that's
So you get a nice long charge with that. He's got 1 unit of 10 Terminators, 1 unit of 5 Terminators, a strike
Actually,
squad.
Drago's a little worse in UKTC because they rule that when he uses Teleport Assault, which is the kind of jump up every turn,
Yep.
he doesn't give his unit +2 to charge or +3 to charge or whatever it is. It's only when he deep strikes. Brutal.
Sad. A unit of 5 Paladins, a unit of 10 Purifiers, an Eversaw Assassin, nice.
Yes.
A unit of Inquisitorial Henchmen, nice. And I guess this is the Dice Down special, Lord Inquisitor Kyria Draxus as well. So a sweet list as well. I would love to play that. Get this game.
I think Kyria Draxus makes it so you can't be targeted outside of 18 inches.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, so that's a cool little kind of pseudo loan up.
Yeah. So yeah, if there weren't any lists that you wanted to go through, Brian, sorry, Vic. I just saw Brian's name pop up. Yeah.
I'm pretty content with that. Is anyone from our team that we haven't covered, or we're all just? I mean, Boris is running GSC.
Yeah.
So Boris, he's a self-proclaimed only elite player on GSC. Sorry, TJ Lanigan. That is all sarcasm and jokes from Boris. But he is an incredible player, and I'm very happy that he's playing something a little bit off meta now. Can you believe GSC's become off meta?
Yeah.
And he's got a huge number of reps into that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how well he does, because I have a feeling Boris is going to go a long way in this tournament.
Yeah, Boris always does well, doesn't he? I was watching him play at
very
Bad Moon Cafe today. Yeah, and I was saying, oh, you could do this, could do that. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm doing that. And I was like, oh, man, this guy really knows his stuff.
He's also applied for Team England this year. We've got Chris Radford and Boris applying for Team England. So,
yes.
I think this will be a great chance for both. Chris is running the CSM. A great chance for both of them just to show their real caliber.
Yeah, of course. And they've been practicing a lot. Yeah, I'm really excited for all of our team. We've been prepping a lot for this. And yeah, everything's been going really well so far. So that's kind of the pre-LGT. I've got the invitational with my Scuffed Necron list, which hopefully I'll be able to get work off for. But yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to LGT. It'll be a real blast. I need to get painting as well.
This is awesome. I'm so glad we could record this episode for you guys. If you have any questions, just ping us, drop us a message, Discord. We're always happy to chat with everyone. Yep. And of course, leave a comment, leave a like. Make sure that we can keep spreading out a little bit.
We're really bad at that.
We are really bad at telling people to do that because if you interact with us on the comments, we will kind of reply to your comments and questions.
For sure. This has been what I think is episode 36, but if it isn't, it is now.
It is.
Sorry, we've been a bit absent, but I guess we'll probably be covering the post-LGT results in a couple of days' time as well. If you see us or Team Ignite at LGT, come up and say hello. We're all really friendly bunch of people. I will most likely bring Coup, the board game, again to come and play, and I'll probably play that between my rounds as well. So have a lovely day, everyone. Wherever you are, hope you've enjoyed the podcast. It's good to be back, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys next time by the Fireside. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.